We'll give it just a couple minutes here to see if anybody else joins. We had more people register that are joined, so we'll get started shortly here.
So what do you think, Zach? Should we get started? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, let's get going. I think that's good.
Sounds good. All right, everybody. Well, welcome to our second in our webinar series around SharePoint and the Power Platform. In today's topic, we're going to be talking about the process of building a SharePoint site, using as an example one of our customers, the City of Edina. And the topic behind that is to talk about how they actually received national recognition for the website, the Intranet website that they developed. So with me today, I'm Dave Kleist. I'm our Director of Operations here at BlueNet. With me today is Zach Welding, who is our M365's Senior Architect, and he'll be doing the meat of the presentation. I'll go ahead and talk about the the award that they actually won, some of the challenges that the City of Edina faced, the process that was used to build, and most importantly, what kind of results did they see after they actually went through this process? So obviously with any project, you put something together, you kind of want to see some results. We'll then show you how that actually was built, what some of the things look like, some of the tools there, and then have a summary at the end. As we go along, feel free to drop anything into the Q&A section if there are questions you'd like to take a look at, and we will try and cover them as we get towards the end of the session. So to start off with, the award. So the City of Edina belongs to the City County Communications and Marketing Association, which is a national network of local government in their communications department. So something that's been around for over almost 40 years. And they have an annual conference along with annual awards where they go through and talk about some of the highlights in the industry, bring forward things that they find as good examples. City of Edina brought forth their intranet site after it had been developed into the competition, and they did actually get identified as a winner. You can see here for the issue-specific website for under 100,000 users. So very prestigious award. So what started with this process? Why was the City of Edina looking to do these things? So when they started looking at how their current intranet site, EDInet, or Edinet, was set up, they were noticing some challenges as they were moving along trying to use the set. First one was aging technology. They had making a technology choice a number of years ago, and it just wasn't aging well. It's becoming more brittle and difficult to work with. The second challenge that they had was the way that the site was set up for its organization didn't really align with what the city was trying to accomplish going forward. So it was really kind of hampering what they wanted to bring into the community, both with their employees and then the community at large. Third one, duplication of files. The technology choice actually required that they would have to migrate content into the intranet site and bring that forward. So that meant that you actually had multiple copies of information that we want on the intranet site, and then what was the actual source. And then another challenge they had was around how to actually increase the use of the site. They just were not seeing the level of engagement that they were hoping for in working with the site. You know, it was meant to be the contact area, that sort of central communication point for the entire city, all the employees, and it really just wasn't getting used. And then lastly, they were running into challenges with the new technology, so not being mobile friendly for tablets or phones. So to address that problem, they put together a project, and once that was approved, created a joint project team composed of the following components. So the first one is obviously the communications department, who was driving this effort. So they were the ones that recognized the need, got the buy-in from city management, from the council, bring that forward. The next partner they brought into that, of course, is the IT department as the group that was going to support the platform over the long term and was supporting the current Edinet that they had rolled out for their internet. The third one was the web development team, who's actually going to build this. The city recognized they didn't have the expertise in-house, so they went out for bid and then awarded the contract. We at BlueNet partnered with Creative Arcade, who is a web design firm, to do a joint project proposal for this, won the bid, and so we became the web development team for them. And then the last group in the joint project team was a representative from each major department. So going back to that idea of wanting to get better engagement, more reflect the goals, they brought in major representatives from all of the departments to try and get them represented here. And this just wasn't sort of a internal to City Hall, but it was also bringing in those departments that were more out in the field, like Public Works or the fire department. So once the project team had actually been assembled, the next part was how did they actually construct the website? So the key point that they did here was took an iterative development approach. So rather than just run off, get some requirements, you know, put a design together and boom, here it is. They went through an entire process where it was an incremental development, try some things, test some things, make some decisions along the way. But what that meant was they were always addressing these topics as they were moving through that process, always keeping an eye on architecture and governance, making sure that the choices that were being made would align with how they would need to control the environment. So making sure that IT requirements and compliance requirements were met. The second one that they were always looking at was like making sure that the site organization matched, again, those goals and what the city departments looked like so that there was an alignment. Continuous feedback coming from the individual departments, looking for input. Again, we talked about having those major representatives brought in. And so we always making sure that those folks were involved, had input, talked about what their particular needs were for their departments to address that. Fourth one, very important, design mock-ups. So one of those things that happened with the iterative development was, okay, this is what we wanted to look like, but because we were doing the other topics like architecture and governance, the organization structure, is making sure that those were feasible choices that you would make in the design. So you didn't end up with something that's like, this is what I want it to look like, and we can't do it. And then lastly, of course, making sure that training was happening. So obviously within the core group, making sure everyone's understanding what was the capabilities of the platform, what they were looking to have it do, and then what that would mean as they look to roll it out. So why SharePoint? So one of the things that the city really liked about looking at the SharePoint platform is it integrated with tools that are already in use. Because they were a heavy user of the Microsoft 365 tool set, it was leveraging all of those things, whether it was Excel, PowerPoint, just SharePoint folders in general. So it aligned nicely to have the site actually draw off of that. And because they were already a user, there was less training needed to actually get users up and running. So it was much more straightforward to talk about things like, well, how do we support the individual departments? How can they get involved? You didn't have to worry about having to teach some special technical skills in order for the employees to participate in the particular functions of the sites. They also like the no-code updates. So the ability that they could do a fair amount of maintenance within the site without actually having to get a programmer or have very technical requirements there. The other one, reduced data duplication. The idea here is because they were leveraging the Microsoft 365 platform, you could use that to actually have the data in the intranet site. So you're getting away from this idea of having to create a staging environment and a promotion scheme to put data up, have multiple copies and make sure it all stayed the same. It reduced that by being able to leverage the existing Microsoft data. It offered streamlined workflows. One of the challenges that they had with the earlier site was as they wanted to expand functionality, they would have to bring in like additional tools for a particular action or item. And so that just became much more cumbersome to do any kind of maintenance. Moving back into the SharePoint allowed them to streamline that workflow. They also liked the idea that it supported private department sites. So you could have sub-sites within the major site, and those could be tailored to the specific requirements of the department that they were supporting. So rather than a cookie cutter, it looks the same for everyone, it did allow them to create sites for their own specific groups to meet their own specific needs. And then lastly, it had the secure authentication built in. So because again, leveraging the Microsoft environment, all of that identity was incorporated into the SharePoint site. So the big thing is, how did it go? So you go through a project like this, they were looking for some results, and here's what they came up with as far as showing what they got. So proving out that it was in fact worth the effort that they went through. So what they found, they compared 6-month periods year over year, total page views went up 24%. More importantly, the time of engagement per employee on average to the site went from 2 minutes, 45 seconds to a little over 8.5 minutes. So a lot more engagement. One of the things they found with there is that they were also seeing like cross-department views. So as an example, someone being more interested in what's happening with the fire department. So you're seeing someone out of City Hall actually looking at some of these other departments to see what kind of things that they were promoting into the city. So seeing more of that cross-department. And then the number of pages to that point being viewed per user went up from 15 to a little over 26 on average. So what it really reflected was that they were getting deeper engagement from employees, and especially from outside of City Hall. One of the challenges they had with their old site was that it was much more tailored to the administrative side of the city, very focused on the staff that was based in City Hall, but difficult for people like in Public Works or in the fire department and police department to really feel like they can get engaged there. Like they would go to get an HR thing, but really were not compelled to get in there and do anything else with the site. So with that, here we'll make this available afterwards, but this is a link to the actual award that they did. And here's a quick example of the old and new of what you saw between the old site and the new site. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Zach and he can start walking through some of the components and show you what that looked like.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And I put that link to that PDF in the chat for all of you guys to get to. So if you want to open that up and peek around while I'm going through the demo, if there's something in there that I don't touch on specifically and you have a question about, feel free to throw that in the Q&A. Okay, so we'll start with a little bit of architecture first. There's kind of 3 main areas of how we architected this. One being the intranet. And a lot of times when we run these projects, I find that the definition of intranet doesn't mean the same to a lot of people, and that can cause confusion. So when we run these projects, 99.9% of the time, intranet means the content is generally available to everybody in the organization. So when we talk about Edinet, their intranet, everything that gets put out here, like I said, 99.9% of it is available to everybody to consume. They did pick SharePoint because it had the private department area as well. So that is also integrated here. However, most of the departments utilize Teams to get to that content. When we built this, they hadn't quite adopted Teams yet, so it was integrated into Edinet as well. So at the root here, we have Edinet, the main homepage. Every department that wanted to participate and that had content that should be generally available to the entire organization has a department site that is connected to Edinet. This was built using the hub site technology within SharePoint Online. Those of you that have been using SharePoint in the past, the term subsite might ring a bell. We don't really recommend using those anymore. The hub site model provides much more flexibility long-term. So every department has a site that is connected to Edinet, and they also have a private team site, which, like I said before, is integrated just through this button here. This button is audienced, so only people that are a member of administration would actually see this in order to get to their internal team site only. Like I said, most of the departments use Teams to collaborate internally and work on files, but this is another way to get to their SharePoint page. There are a few departments that do use SharePoint internally. I think communications and police are the two main ones that Edina has using that internally. So that's the architecture, kind of giving a demo of how the site works and what some of the main features are. Search, this was a big improvement from their old platform. We didn't mention what that platform was. It was WordPress. And for any of you that have worked in WordPress in the past or currently, you know that there's all sorts of add-ins. Not everything works the same, and it can kind of be a nightmare to maintain. Every little thing requires another add-in that might not work the same as the other add-in. So moving to SharePoint, bringing everything under the same hood was one of the big appeals in this project. The search bar is configured to search the entire intranet. So if I were to search for policy, it's going to search all of Edinet. You can see that in the breadcrumb here. However, you do have the ability to back up and search outside of the intranet. So if I'm a member of the private HR team, I have some stuff in HR that has the word policy in it. If I click back outside of the organ and search the entire organization, I'm going to find stuff everywhere. So this search bar is available no matter where you're at within the site, and it's always scoped to where you're at. So when I land on administration, now it's going to say search administration. Again, if I type in policy here, it's going to search, but I get option to broaden my search scope on this results page. Working our way down, the navigation. This was a big thing that we spent a lot of time thinking about at the beginning of the project. The idea was that all of the most important things were always available to the employees and the users within one click. So this isn't just a normal drop-down menu. It's what we call a mega menu, flyout menu, where we've got different sections that are categorized with the actual links below them. The nice thing about this is even though we architected the site with a bunch of different departments, with a navigation menu like this, we can combine links that point to different sites based on where the employee might find them. So you don't need to know, does this live in HR? Does this live in finance? Does this live in accounting? It's more of a, how can I help you? Or what are you looking for type of navigation experience. This navigation stays the same across the entire intranet. So if I were to drill into the communications department, this navigation bar will then move to the top, and now communications has their own navigation bar. So every site has the opportunity to have their own separate secondary navigation alongside the global navigation that is available no matter where you go. Moving down the page, one big thing to point out here, we partnered with Bind Tuning to work on the design of this site. They are a provider of themes and extra web parts to enhance the out-of-the-box functionality of SharePoint. So on this homepage alone, the only out-of-the-box web parts are these two at the top. This, I think, is called an editorial card. This is called the hero web. Are extra importance. So nothing here is automated. They manually come in here and update these. And then this is just a static web part. As we move down the page, this is where we get out of not out of the box anymore. These are all Bind Tuning web parts. So news is a huge one. The way that this is architected, every department has their ability to post their own news. Depending on whoever in whatever department those users have access to add news, each department has a handful of site champions that can edit their site and post news, and it all gets rolled up to the homepage. So you can see they've got tags on here. saying what site they come from. Yellow means that it's an internal news article. Green means that it's coming from their public website. They use Civic Plus as their public website provider, and we have an automation that's built that anytime they post news there, it automatically relinks it to their intranet as well. So we're not duplicating content. When we click on this, it actually links out to the news article on their public website. We do the same thing for any events that are posted on their public website, and that same color code applies here. Anything that is in green is something that's coming from their public website. Anything that is orange or yellowish is coming from their internal intranet. And again, it's tagged with what department it's coming from. Quick links over here on the right. You can kind of get close to this with out-of-the-box quick links. Edina had a requirement to really fine-tune and make their website look like it's not out of the box, that they actually stuck some extra effort into it. So they made these custom icons. They're just images that we used as the background for these icons. And then fine-tuning allows you to use those images, move the text around, use different shapes, and adjust the grid view, whereas out-of-the-box SharePoint wouldn't let you do that. They've got another iteration of the quick links web part here in different form. So this one's a little bit smaller, not as flashy. This actually lets the user add their own favorites to the page. So if I wanted to add something new that would just show up for me, I could click the add button and away I go. That is another feature that's not available out of the box. As we move down, we have an employee directory. This is a people web part from Bind Tuning. It's fully integrated to Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. So this pulls all the active user accounts. You can apply filters on here, which you'll see later on some of the department pages, but it's fully integrated with the out-of-the-box contact card. As I hover, they've got quick buttons to send a Teams message, an email, or Teams phone call. This again is not something that you can get out of the box without custom work. They've got some employee recognition. They've got anniversaries and birthdays. Some of the cool things about this that we programmed in here was every 5 years, they have special milestones at Edina that they like to highlight. So every 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. Every increment of 5, an extra message gets displayed on this card compared to the other ones. And this just pulls from the back end and does all the calculations automatically based off of their hire date. Same thing with birthdays. They actually have a form that they have on their website to opt in to display your birthday. So I believe right here. So underneath the recognition, birthdays, if you do want to opt in and have your birthday be public knowledge, there's a form that you have to fill out. Pretty simple. And once you've filled this out, it automatically enters the data into the back end, and then your profile will be displayed on the homepage. As we move down, same thing. So there's one list in the back end that's maintaining all of the anniversaries and birthdays, and then also new employees. So anybody that's gotten hired, I think it's within the last 30 days, and upcoming 30 days would be displayed here. And then we have a photo gallery at the bottom. They rotate this based on whatever their most recent event was. And again, this is using the Bind Tuning web part. There is options to do photo stuff out of the box, but it's not as, you don't get a nice player like this, and there are not as many design options. They created another page backend to keep track of all these. So if you want to put something else that was no longer on the homepage, they've got all the galleries listed in the backend that you can go and get to. Moving on to the department level sites. So as Dave mentioned, we had key subject matter experts from every department that were interviewed, polled, and we found out the top 5 or 6 things that all departments wanted to display and get the point across on their department sites. So we came up with a department level landing page that looks the same on every department. This way, as users move about they know where to look for the similar content. News is always going to be over here on the left. Important information, department picture will be in the middle. Quick links that are unique to that department. Here's that people web part again that is automatically filtered in the back end to only show those with the communications department. We've enhanced that a little bit by adding some extra contact cards in the middle, just to kind of give a further description of what those users might be focusing on, who to contact for certain things, and then at the bottom are FAQs. This is a big one. I think that sets bind tuning apart. There's no way to do these tiny little accordions out of the box where you can search within them. So for FAQs and stuff like this, I think these are pretty cool. If I hop to a different department, it's going to be the same story, different content. News is going to be over here on the left, their department picture in the middle, key contacts. As you can see, engineering doesn't have as many quick links, but they're still in the same spot. So every department page has a similar looking landing page. And as I mentioned before, they have the ability to add more content with inner pages. So that they can either put as quick links, they could put in a request to get those links added to the global navigation, or they can put them in their site navigation by themselves. So an example of what an inner page could look like. Our common design was 2/3 of the page would be main body of the content, any other pieces of content here, and then the sidebar would be reserved for any quick links that are related to that page, any contact information, or links to documents. There was a couple areas where they took the inner pages kind of to the next level. One of those would be, let's see if I can find it here, their employee handbook. So previously all they had was a PDF version of their handbook. They decided that it would be worth it to digitize that completely into pages and make it a little bit more interactive and searchable. Also, being more mobile friendly. Everything that's in SharePoint automatically is mobile friendly. You don't have to do anything extra. There's also a SharePoint app that you can get from the Google or Apple stores. And all of this stuff just kind of automatically works. There's no extra work that needs to be done. So they broke out all their handbook chapters with using the web parts here. They still do maintain a PDF version that they allow you to download. But if I were to click on one of these, and again, this is another piece that really highlights the power of the bind tuning platform. They've got a table of contents web part that is displayed over here on the right. We've got a list, quick links web part that is able to be reused from page to page. Had this been out of the box and you added a quick links web part to SharePoint, you'd have to add all the links, go to the next page, you'd have to do it all over again. There's no way to reuse that stuff. Bind tuning stores their data. That gives you the option to store their data in a list in the back end so that it can be reused. So we had to create this contents quick links web part one time, and then we can add it to multiple pages without having to redo all of that work. Then at that point, it's just a long scrolling page, and I can use the table of contents web part on the right to scroll to what I need. I can search. I could search up at the top as well, but it just provided an easier experience for employees to find the data that they were looking for. When they get to, if and when they get to start using Copilot, they could create an agent that would tie into their handbook and be completely catered just to that and let people ask questions because all their content is already on SharePoint pages versus a PDF. So that was another big driver to moving this there, is kind of planning for the future and being ready for that as well. Just to give you a quick example of how the department pages work, as I mentioned, they're kind of the three layers. There's Edinet, which is the main homepage. There is department sites that are connected to Edinet, and then there are private department sites as well. Just to kind of give you an example, again, this is the communications site. Here's the button for their internal site. They are one of the departments that utilizes SharePoint for a little bit. They use it for news news. Otherwise, when looking at the documents, the majority of the group uses Teams to access and collaborate on their documents, but they can get to them through SharePoint as well. This is where instead of using a local file server. That pretty much sums up the demo here. Unless anybody has any extra questions, or if you had a chance to look through that PDF and you wanted more detail on one of the topics in there, feel free to put that in the chat window and we can address that. Otherwise, that will conclude the demo.
To wrap up really quick, I don't see anything in the Q&A channel for questions, but certainly reach out to us afterwards if something does occur to you that you would like us to drill into more detail. But just to summarize kind of what we saw, you can see how SharePoint, along with leveraging that bind tuning, provides a solid and economical foundation for building your purpose-driven websites. So definitely we can, if you're looking at something, for internal, for sure. That would be what we. And so, did you see the question come in, Zach?
Yep, I'm answering that.
Okay, and so we just wanted to say that by leveraging the Microsoft set of tools, you can get to achieve your objectives without that sort of expansive, time-consuming projects. Really, a lot of what actually took time in this particular project wasn't necessarily the let's put something together. It was the how do we decide what we want to work on, that education piece, the iterative process, which really is more about everybody getting up to speed to a common vision and understanding of what they're trying to deploy. So SharePoint provides that solid background for you to, once you get to that decision point, to actually build out, test, and deploy the solution that you're looking for. And question in from came in is, how difficult is it to implement the employee directory into the intranet? You mentioned it wasn't an out-of-the-box web part.
Yeah, so the one that I demoed was not out of the box. That's a bind tuning web part, and honestly, a big driver for why a lot of people decide to go that route. If you didn't use bind tuning, you would either have to rely on the SharePoint has a people web part, which isn't great if you've used it. It has an org chart web part, which also isn't great because you have to pick one person to start with, and then it doesn't really, it's not very interactive. The only option that I've had to do for those that did not choose bind tuning and they really wanted a people directory, you can make one using the search PNP web parts. Again, it's a outside web part that you have to install and then configure and code a little bit. And it's not as it's a whole separate page. It's not just like a little integrated web part. So, yep, it kind of depends on what the budget allows and what priorities are the most important. I will say, did I put it in the chat? I did. So I just put a link in the chat to bind tuning's intranet description page. You can see all the different things there. If you click on the build option as you're scrolling down, that'll list all the different web parts that are available in their suite.
And we'll send a PDF of the presentation after this webinar to everyone that's attended, so it'll have the links in there as well. So we'll make sure that's included in the email. And with that, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We do appreciate it and hope you have a good rest of the day.